Hi everyone, good evening. This is Sophia with Barefoot Baobab. I this camera being on the side always trips me out. I'm like looking for it up top somewhere over here, but it's not. Anyways, I was reading this story yesterday on my Barefoot Baobab Facebook page, but I kind of want to record more videos to have for you here on YouTube. I know not everybody uses Facebook, so trying to just keep the literacy going and the storytelling going on more venues. So, this is a book by Barefoot Books and Publishing House, The Adventures of Achilles. And of course, this is not a new story, but I just like the imagery here, and it just got, kind of revamped, I guess. But here you go. Um, Let's see here. We have Hugh Lupton, Daniel Morden, and Carol Henneth. And if you're interested in a book like this, there is a full-length CD. Actually, there are two of them, so you can just put them on sometimes and just let them play. If you don't feel like reading, boom, the reading is done for you. All right, my disclaimer is that English is my second/third language, so sometimes I may say things a little bit funny. The first chapter is called The Seeds of Love, so I'm just going to read that one. The Seeds of Love. There was once an impossible mountain, a mountain so vast that no mortal ever saw its summit. It was called Mount Olympus. It was the home of the undying gods, the immortals. Zeus, king of all immortals, sat in his throne on Mount Olympus. The earth was spread out before him. Nothing was hidden from his view. He was fascinated by the stories that unfolded beneath him. Zeus whiled away whole centuries watching the little figures scurrying to their deaths. He took to watching a nymph who liked to visit a beach on an island in the blue Asian Sea. Every morning she would ride a dolphin to the shallows, wade up the incline, lie on her belly in the white sand, and fall asleep. Zeus became consumed with desire for her. He summoned his brother, the sea god Poseidon. "Who is she?" asked Zeus. "Her name is Thetis," said Poseidon. "Surely you know of her. It is said that one day she'll have a son who will grow up to be the greater than his father." Zeus had overthrown his own father, Kronos. He had no desire to suffer the same fate at the hands of one of his sons. How could he lie with her without putting himself in danger? A shining thought entered Zeus's mind. He'd find a mortal husband for Thetis. She'd have a son by him. The child would grow up to be greater than his human father, and Zeus would be free to lie with her to his heart's content. There's Thetis there. The mighty gods can disguise themselves as mortals. Zeus transformed himself so that to all the world he was a nobleman. He traveled to the court of a Greek king whose name was Peleus. He was one of the Argonauts who had sailed with Jason. Peleus was a fierce man, skilled in the arts of battle. He wore his livid scars as a queen wears her jewels. Zeus carried himself well. Peleus was impressed by his bearing and welcomed him with a lavish feast. After the feast, Zeus made a gesture in the air. An image appeared before Peleus, the image of an island in the blue Aegean Sea. Peleus saw a female figure approaching the island, riding a dolphin as though it was a pony. She waded up the shallows, lay on her belly in the white sand, and fell asleep. Peleus was filled with love and desire. He cursed under his breath. He had been overtaken by his vision. His actions were no longer in his control. He couldn't help himself. He was infatuated with this nymph. It was as though he was under a spell. "Who is she?" asked Peleus. "Her name is Thetis," said Zeus. "I'll tell you where you'll find her." Peleus found to his dismay that he had no choice but to seek out Thetis. Immediately, he began the preparations. He set out on his voyage as soon as the tide would allow. He sailed to the island he'd seen in his vision. He laid out lavish gifts on the beach. A shape appeared between sea and sky. The sea nymph Thetis saw a man gesturing to her from the island. Warily, she climbed from her dolphin and waded through the shallows. She saw trinkets laid out in the sand. The great warrior King Peleus blushed, stumbled, and mumbled words of love. "You can have me if you can catch me," said Thetis. He laughed, then lunged. Peleus's arms were around a seagull that pecked at his eyes with its sharp beak and gouged a chunk out of his cheek. Then Thetis was a swallow, darting out of his grasp. By pure luck he managed to grab her, and found himself wrapped around an enormous eel. He knew if she reached the ocean, she would be free. He gripped her tightly and found himself clutching a lioness that struck him with her paw, scratched him with her claw. He fell. She leapt into the sea as a seal. They stared at one another, Peleus panting, staunching the wound in his cheek. Thetis held his gaze so long with her wet pebble eyes that Peleus took some comfort. Then she turned to the open sea, and she was gone. That night, Peleus lit a fire on the island and made offerings. Then he shouted to the stars. "You, stranger, you who came to my palace, if you are who I think you are, help me now." There was a blast of light before him. Peleus turned his face away. His ears were singing. Even with his eyes closed, he could see the figure emerging from the light. It was Hermes, the messenger of the gods. Peleus knew him by his winged sandals. Hermes grinned. "This is what you must do." The next morning, Thetis returned. She saw no footprints in the sand. She climbed from the back of her dolphin and waded up the shallows. She searched her beach. Nothing. No one. She lay on her belly in the white sand and fell asleep. Peleus had been hiding in the branches of a tree. He climbed down the tree and crept across the beach. Carefully, tenderly, he tied her hands and feet behind her back with a rope. Thetis awoke with a jerk. The rope bit into her skin. Instantly she knew Peleus had outwitted her. If she were to transform herself into an animal, she would tear her body in two. Her shoulders slumped. Peleus approached. He knelt. He untied her wrists and ankles. He rubbed them. Thetis rolled onto her back, drew his head to hers, and kissed him. So that is all for today. The next chapter is called A Wedding and a Birth. And I will see you then. Have a good night and read on.